All right, this is Phil Burgess and Chris Dance from Australia. We're just doing 2-minute tours at the moment. We're going to go and speak to some of the top skippers, but we thought we'd first start with Chris. He's doing exceptionally well. The Aussies are in probably 3rd or 4th place at the moment.
Yeah, maybe 5th.
Maybe 5th, okay. Yeah. So I'll just turn the camera around and we'll keep going like we're doing. So Chris, tell us about your race strategy. How's that been going?
For me, it's about learning as I go along in the regatta. I definitely came in here a bit green and a bit raw and just learning so much. So one of my bigger takeaways is how to set the B and the C rig up, which we don't use very often. So accepting that you have a little bit of lee helm and it's all about pinching up and getting some height. The other big takeaway is you have to keep your nose clean. It's amazing what a tangle will do. So now I'm deliberately tacking port tackers or unducking port tackers, not even saying anything about it, just trying to solve the fastest course, avoid all the contacts and collisions.
Yeah. So what have you learned about the B and C rigs? Rake, any settings?
I think
out?
Yeah, try to have as max rake on with the B and C rigs and relatively tight leech on the back. And I like a bit more twist on the jib because it allows you to pinch and you get a wider groove to sail in, so you can watch that top of the jib stall, and then you know you're right on the edge of pinching. So yeah, I think that's working quite well.
Yep. You done anything to your transmitter? Any special programming?
No expo. No? Just learn to sail it. I'm a big believer in keeping it simple because sometimes your radio needs to rebind or something like that. So the simpler the better. And I find that works really well for me.
Yep. Well, he's been amazingly consistent. So when you see the results, check out Chris from Australia's scores, and you'll see he's always up the top. So it's great to see. Thanks, Chris, for your time.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, it's Phil and Chris back here again with the famous John Tushingham this time.
Yeah, so John, you're ultra consistent out of there, and one thing that I noticed is we've changed rigs a number of times during racing, and you seem to just put the rig on, do a little bit of adjustment and go out and win races. How are you doing that? What are you thinking about? What tips would you give to the guys back at home?
Well, I'm probably quite lucky that my home club is quite windy. So we're used to using the smaller rigs. So I pretty much know what the trim is as soon as it goes on. But yeah, practice.
Practice. And I noticed that there's boats out there sailing different. Some have got tight leeches with the B rig and others have got loose leeches. Where do you prefer to set up your main?
I prefer to have a fairly loose leech for speed, but with the courses that we've got now, it's important to point. So I keep a very wide jib, fairly twisted jib, and I'm just playing the kicker and getting as much lift as I can. And a fairly flat mainsail.
And what are you looking for on that twist? How would you know that you've got it right?
Well, my rigging procedure is always the same. I get the jib right. I think it's right. I go on the water, look at the jib slot and the twist. If I'm happy with that, then I'll tune the boat with the kicker, which means if I'm not happy with it, I can bring the boat in and quickly make one adjustment to the kicker and it'll be in balance.
Yeah, that's great advice. So you're willing to put the boat on the water, and if it doesn't feel right, you come in and do a quick change of the kicker.
Exactly, yeah.
What about your jib booms? Where do you position your boom on this heavy stuff?
Similar position. I try and get the jib boom as wide as I can, get the jib slot, which is normally just inside the inner gunnel. In lighter weather with the air rig, I can bring it in a little bit, but my theory is to get the wind through the rig with the minimum drag.
Yeah.
So I can keep the jib slot as wide as I can do, and as much twist in the jib so the top is just working.
Yep.
And then I'll tune the main.
Yep. And we know in this regatta starts have been so crucial. What's going on your mind on that start, and how are you staying out of trouble?
I wish I did stay out of trouble all the time.
We've all had our fair share, but you seem to be avoiding most of it. So what are you doing?
It's a very crowded line, and it's been advantageous to start in the middle, but that's where the blockage is. That's where everybody's rafting up. So it's trying to get the viewpoint. You've got to stand well to windward at the start line to see the boat, and then it's just trying to find that gap right at the start. It's that quarter boat length where you can just get out into clear wind and then you're away. I've tried starting at the far end, I've tried starting near end. Far end's here, there's not much wind, and the near end you're straight into the wall, and one or two boats might
So
get out there.
you've been willing to vary your strategy as the regatta gone on to try different things?
Yeah, it's desperation really.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. And one last question, we've got a lot of new people to the class. Have all the controls on the boat and all the things that you can do, what should a new person focus on?
And obviously rig tune. Well, one thing is reliability. Make sure your boat's always dried, and just make sure you look after the boat. Electrics and salt water don't really mix. Yeah, you can learn to set the rig up. One thing I always do when I get a new boat, or I put on the transmitter about minus 40% exponential, which just gives me a softer rudder about the sensor position, just for sailing smoother. You see a lot of people jiggling around, especially on the runs. It gets very, very sensitive, so I knock the sensitivity down.
So you use a little bit of expo, and it's all about minimising your helm movements on the straight line.
Sail as smoothly as you can.
Yeah, so a lot of newcomers come in, you find do twitchy boats.
Yeah, very much. I sail other people's boats, and they're very, very nervous.
Yeah.
Do you have any expo on your main sheet as well, on the winch?
Just on the rudder.
Yeah, right. Okay.
That's great advice, John. Thank you for sharing in our 2-minute interview.
Thank you, John.
That was helpful.
Yeah, well sailed too. Okay, we're back here with Chris and Craig. Craig's currently leading the 2023 Globals. So, Chris, what's happening?
So, Craig, I want to ask you a few questions. As you set your boat up, what do you think the most important control is?
I'm just going to start with the rudder, because I am asked by people to come up and give them a hand, and more often or not the rudder's off to the side. So they're trying to trim the boat and it's sailing differently on the two tacks, and so first up, get the rudder sorted.
Yeah.
So the next step will do, I have no measurements for the boat. I have no idea what the mast brake is, etc. I let the forestay off, and then I put the backstay on so that the mast matches the mainsail's luff curve. Maybe not at the very top, but certainly in the bottom third. I don't think there's any advantage in having the sail sitting behind the mast. So once the backstay is on and set, that's it. I never touch it again.
And is that the same for both A and B and C?
All my
rigs the same strategy?
Yeah. Never touch the backstay again. It's only there to match the luff curve.
And I know your race strategy is extremely consistent in the results. What are you thinking about on that start and first beat?
The starts here are nasty. You really have to get up into that front row. You can't come in late. You have to get up with the front runners. You have to stop and you have to wait. And you can't let your nose slip back. But as long as you lined up with the boats in the start, we were able to get off okay. It's been really hard here because we have a counter wave that reflects off the wall at the back of our lake, and when you're sitting on the stop line, the wave pushes you over the line like a current, which is part of the reason we've had so many generals, I think. But I've been lucky enough to find a hole, make a hole, start with the nose about the same.
So you're really trying to minimise that risk in the first beat.
But if you're not in the front row here, you're not at the top mark.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to go in there and fight.
And you've had a great regatta, and I think you've moved into the league quite early on. How's your mindset changed as the racing's gone along? Has it been the same, or?
No, it's a long regatta. There were lots of races to come. I've been very nervous. The tension has been quite, and probably a bit of a panic today in the first race, and I made a muck of it and got tied up at the top mark. But I've really just tried to get off the start cleanly and sail. I'm definitely slower in the first half when there are other boats around, but the moment the pressure's off and the fleet opens up a bit, then the boat speeds up there and I'm fast.
Yeah, no, great regatta, and thank you for sharing your tips, Craig.
Yeah.
Thanks, Craig. All right, Phil and Chris are back here again with the famous Mark Golison from the USA.
Well, I don't know about famous.
So, Mark, you do a lot of radio sailing, a lot of different classes. What's different about the DF class when setting it up?
It's actually pretty similar to setting up my IOM. Everybody sets them up a little bit differently. And it's all about just getting the boat balanced. A lot of people will go with, a tighter main leech. I tend to go with a little looser, but in my IOM I kind of do the same thing.
Yep.
So yeah.
And the racing's out there is very tight. I noticed that you've got a knack at many times of staying out of trouble and sometimes not staying out of trouble. What are you doing to try and avoid the commotions out there?
Well, I try. I'm definitely not always successful. And when I've had a lot of really poor starts this regatta, but I've had incredible speed most of the time and made incredible comebacks throughout the first 2/3 of the regatta. It's very difficult to stay clear on this race course because there's a lee shore, everybody starts and the fleet drives itself right down into the wall, and it's mass carnage, and there's almost no way out of it. It's tough.
Minimising risk. I notice also you're very quick downwind. What are you doing to pick up the pass, or how are you getting those passing lanes downwind?
I have been going well downwind. A lot of it is just making sure you come up if you get a little slow and get your boat speed up. In the puffs, drive it down. Nothing really fancy, but just keeping the boat moving, momentum, and but a lot of it I think is being willing to come up and not just
willing to come up in the light pressure. That's great advice.
Not just volley down.
And I noticed when you're coming into the bottom mark, you're very decisive of which mark you want to go in the gate. How are you picking which mark you want to go on the downwind gate?
Well, it depends. If there's lots of boats around, then a lot of times it's just the one with less traffic. So, and less traffic close to you, so you can get around. If there aren't, you just try to see which one you feel will be advantageous for going into the weather leg. Sometimes it's closer, sometimes it's the right side of the course that you want to get to.
And last question, we've got a lot of newcomers into the DF classes. If you had to pick one control or one thing on the boat that they should concentrate on, what would it be?
One thing, I guess backstay, depending on the wind, but backstay and making sure that if there is some wind, make sure you have headstay tension. Sometimes if you look at people that are way in the back, their headstays are flopping around, and that's death. And then the only other thing would be a combination of everything to get the balance right.
So balance and don't be afraid to pull the backstay on. Great advice. Thank you, Mark.
All right.
Thanks, Mark. All right, we're back here with Roy Gardner from South Africa. Just had a great A-Fleet last race. So over to you, Chris.
Yeah, so Roy, you've come in here with not a lot of experience in racing at this level. What have you picked up?
I found that just the level of competition is just so intense. I think even if you look down, fortunately I wasn't in the D fleet in any of the races, but even the guys sailing in the D fleet, it's just at such a high level to compete and to get out of one fleet, to jump the ladders, to go to the next. You've got to be really good, eh? It takes a lot of patience and time and making sure your setup's right. But yeah, it's just, for me, the level has been incredible.
And I saw you were very consistent on the first beat and obviously put a lot of effort into that starting position and first beat. What's going through your mind and what were your strategies out there?
So I think when the regatta started, I wasn't aggressive enough on the start line. You try and hold your position and then guys would come and fall down on top of you. and it messes up your whole race, you know. And if you get shot out the back of the fleet, the guys are so quick, the fleet's gone within the blink of an eye. So basically I just try to get my position on the first row of the start line, and when I was able to do that and get clean air, get boat speed at the gun, then it seemed to work a bit better for me.
And what are you doing, you know, we're changing rigs. How are you finding B-rig? What are the tricks that you can pass on around B-rig?
So B-rig, when it's gusty like this, I try to have a bit more twist than what I normally would. I normally run with quite a tight leech line and then have the boom set quite far out.
Yep.
But with this, when the knocks come, they're so hard, you want to just try and spill a bit off the top so the boat doesn't just keep screwing up into the wind. And yeah, other than that, just your normal base settings. I try run a normal about a 50mm foot on both the main and the jib. Obviously when it gets a bit more choppy, then maybe a bit of a deeper foot in the jib.
And we noticed a lot of the South Africans were very fast in the breeze. Do you do much sailing in B and C back at home?
Fortunately we have a mixture. We do get a bit of the very light days, but then because we don't enjoy it, we just go and have lunch and wait for the wind to pick up in the afternoon. But we primarily sail on B and C rigs, so we get used to the waves. I mean, even these waves, although they're big, we sail in waves twice the size. But yeah, so we are accustomed to the C and B, C and D, but you know, we're trying to improve with A as well.
And I noticed in that race in particular, you're quite fast downwind. What are you doing to keep speed on in the downwind?
Well, I think when the puffs hit you, you've got to keep bearing off to keep the nose out and catch the next wave, because if you point into the gust, it just the booms hit the water and the whole thing just does a ball in the kissy. So it's trying to just bear down with the gusts and ride the waves, and I was able to keep the nose up. And then you don't do your
nose dive. Oh, awesome regatta. We got to see the improvement. You're consistently an A at the end. And thank you for participating in our 2-minute interview.
Cheers. Thank you, Roy.
Cheers.